this stuff. Make sure it's live. No, yeah, you've been interested in some martial arts? I mean, it's never too late, dude.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my neighbors, a guy in the neighborhood who's big into it as well. Um, I don't know. I've thought about it a few times. We'll see.
Yeah,
I've
man.
looked at a few different styles that kind of like interest me.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I've thought a lot about because my dad used to box big time.
Boxing's
So
fun,
I've thought
man.
about getting in, boxing or something too.
Heck
But
yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, probably will something at some point
Yeah.
when when I have the time and
My
all
only
that.
my only advice really is it doesn't come down to the style. It's just about the instructor, the coach, and the community. Really, you could do any. I mean, you could do anything. You could go for walks with your dogs in the evening. If the company's awesome, you'll do it and you'll love it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I mean, it could be anything. You ready to go?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Cool. Let me do the intro here. All right, everybody, welcome to the Warrior Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Gene, and I've got a special guest today. Before we get into that, please check out our sponsors. We have Tacticalories and Strikeforce Energy. If you buy anything from either one, you can use the code Warrior Mindset for a nice percentage and give yours truly a little kickback. That's how we pay for the server that the website lives on. All right, today we have Reuben Johnson from it's Fly Media Productions. That's the name of the company, right?
Yep.
Awesome. And I met Reuben 2 or 3 years ago in Charleston at one of our earlier hosts on the show with me, Carl, one of his productions, the Bureau. And I really dug what you had to say, man. And I thought we had some conversations. And we had a great conversation earlier this year in New Orleans at another conference. And I really wanted to get you on and just pick your brain about some things and talk to you about that stuff. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, connect with your listeners and stuff.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I remember when I first met you and we were talking about your, I think it was a CSS conference that
Mm-hmm.
you had held, and I thought it was pretty cool and pretty interesting that even though you had a conference, and you know how like in other industries stuff that's like similar could be considered competition, and people,
Right.
you were just there hanging out at that conference meeting everybody, and there was a
Yep.
lot of love, and I really appreciated that. I think that's a testament to good people draw other good people in,
I
and
think you're right.
so I really appreciated that.
And Carl has that knack. He has a knack
Yeah,
to
he
surround
does.
himself with good people.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, so you can't go wrong there. Well, man, you tell us a little bit about your company first of all. Tell me a little bit about what what you do. I know you work with your wife Sherry. We haven't mentioned her. She was going to be on, but she's not feeling well. But tell me a little bit about that setup.
Okay, yeah. So Sherry and I run the technical side, and Sherry runs the creative side,
Mm-hmm.
and then she manages creative strategy and all that good stuff. Our tagline is basically digital storytelling for badass brands.
Right.
So whatever we do, we put our spin on it. So everything from making more dull brands, giving them some cool factor, help them connect better with youthful audiences. We do a lot with lifestyle branding and
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle brands.
Right.
And then more recently, we've been moving into working with more sex positive
Mm-hmm.
brands in that entire space. So anything from sexual wellness and pleasure to adult products and toys, everything kind of in that area. We're looking to do more work in that space. So the way we kind of approach it is we kind of bring a little bit of sensuality, and very upscale vibe, kind of like think how a lot of really premium luxury lifestyle brands incorporate sensuality
Mm-hmm.
into that luxe experience. We kind of do this. That's how we approach whatever we do.
Right.
So our stuff has a really unique spin on it. You
Right.
can't miss it. You can't miss it. Whatever it is that we do, and I
Gotcha.
enjoy it. We've been doing it since about 2000. Sherry and I started working together. But I guess that's the kind of the gist of it. I
Yeah.
should have been a little bit more prepared, and that my bad
No,
for
no, you're
that.
fine. You're fine. So, the reason, it's flashy, it's fancy to talk about that type of industry. But the reason that I found it interesting in the first place was that, oddly enough, that is an industry that's neglected. like a lot of places won't work with those clients. And can you speak to that a little bit about like how you got involved in the first place? Because I mean, people overcharge this type of client. They, or they're embarrassed to work with this type of client, or they won't. So that's really why you're here, because it takes a certain. We on this show we talk a lot about fixed versus growth mindset, right? In that closed mindset versus the open mindset, and that it just really speaks to me that you're working with them.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, and you even knowing that is a big step in the right direction. One of our clients, Cindy Gallup, she's talked a lot about um, a lot of the roadblocks and challenges that anyone labeled sex
Yeah.
industry has to encounter. So, um, a sex educator, if you're
Mm-hmm.
teaching sexual health
Right.
and nothing to do with the pleasure side, but just straight up sexual health,
Right.
talking about genitalia and sexual health, all
Right.
that stuff in a very academic or medical
Yeah, like in a
way.
high school format.
Exactly. You can face a lot of roadblocks just because you're also under the umbrella of sexuality and sex.
Hmm.
So, and then never mind if you go down the pleasure side or the entertainment side or
Right.
what
That's
have
just
you,
not
they
going to
face it
happen.
as well. So they're overcharged. So first and foremost, there's some great resources that talk about it. So there's a great article in Fast Company that talked a lot about it. I believe there's an article in HuffPost. I've been sharing them recently on my
Okay.
Twitter. But one of the things that they shared and that Cindy was talking about is a lot of financial services will not service them. So
So
like
they can't
it's
even get loans.
you can't you forget about a loan. You can't even get the ability to open a bank account.
What?
So we
Okay.
had a client one time who was doing adult toys, sex
Right.
toys.
Sure.
She had a hell of a time just opening a bank account for the business.
Right. Right.
And then so if you can open it, so if you're fortunate enough to be able to where they let you open a bank account, you've got to be careful about will they close your account in the future. I was reading an
Right. And you have
example.
thousands of dollars in there, and then just close your damn account.
Yeah, and then literally just like that. I was reading an example of the gentleman who had a company, and that's what happened with him. The really wild thing with him was he was going to refinance his mortgage on his home, but because he was involved in the vertical of adult entertainment in his day job, the bank when they somebody had recognized his name or something like that when
Huh.
he went to refinance his mortgage, the bank said we're not going to do a mortgage with you. Now he already had a mortgage with them. He just was refinancing it to do a lower
Oh my
rate.
God.
So they basically he they dropped him on that. They closed his bank account, and then he was like left high and dry.
Whoa.
And that was his personal, like, his home mortgage.
Right.
So it's like there's a lot of things where because of the taboo nature of it and all of that, a lot of people who are working in the space have a lot of challenges. So what I was saying was like, if you want to accept credit cards, there's very few companies that'll work with you to allow you to
Mm.
accept transactions. So if you're selling on an e-commerce store and you're selling physical products, you can't necessarily use Stripe or PayPal or authorize.net because a lot of them, if you read the terms and conditions, you'll say right out, they list it under obscenity,
Hmm.
which is really ridiculous because it's
Yeah.
not obscene. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
most human beings do it. It's a
Yeah.
human function. It's part of for
Right.
millennia.
Right.
But it's listed as one. It's listed as a high risk endeavor and under obscenity. So if you're gonna do anything in this space, make sure whatever vendor you're using, read the terms and conditions and make sure it's it's allowable.
Right.
Because that's one
That's
of the biggest challenges they face is that. So
okay.
one of the things we've been doing is kind of using our own network to let folks know about companies that don't have a problem working in the space and understand it's not necessarily any higher risk than any other business. Um,
Yeah. Certainly, it's probably less risk, honestly.
yeah, it's I think the idea of it being high risk, I think is unfairly applied to the
Yeah.
space. Um, I mean, for the longest time, people working in the hair industry, if you were selling weaves and all that, that was considered really high risk, and you couldn't use PayPal and you couldn't use
That's
certain
true.
services, which made no sense
Yeah.
because
It makes no
I
sense.
mean, like, there's a million hair stores that sell weaves and all of that.
Right.
I'm not sure if they're still labeled that way. It's been a while since I've worked with a client who was in that vertical, but it's similar. I think that as we need to normalize the entire conversation about this culturally, like, as a nation and then even beyond the US, we need to normalize it. I think as we normalize it and we can have grown up adult conversations about it, I
Right.
think it'll lower a lot of the barriers and kind of remove a lot of the taboo aspect about it.
Right. Right. Well, I imagine, and another thing we talk on the show a lot about is being flexible. Like, as part of the growth mindset is being flexible in how you deal with people and approach people. What's the mindset of a lot of your clients like when they come to you? Are they just like the end of their rope, frustrated, um, or are they generally speaking like they understand where they are and they've just got to figure things out?
I think that's a good question. So I think they all have a level of frustration, and we don't have a lot of clients in this space yet. Just being upfront, because we're switching into this more so.
Sure, you
Excuse
have
me.
one. That's enough.
Yeah. So I think there's a level of frustration even with a new business. Like I said, several years back we did the business for sex toys. And there's a level of frustration, but they also have a lot of enthusiasm, because I think the indie companies that are getting into this, because most of our stuff is like independent people who are looking to do things
Right.
very differently. I think that despite the challenges, they want to do it so badly because they want to make a positive mark in the space. They want to do things differently. Like, go back like 20 years and the idea of going to a sex toy shop. In my mind, it was that seedy back alley
Right.
kind of vibe that, like, you didn't want to go in there. You didn't want nobody. So a lot of these indie ones, they're looking to change all of that.
Right.
They want something that feels like you can go in there with your partner, or you can go in there by yourself, and it feels just like a really nice little, like if you went to a clothing boutique, or you
Right.
went to,
Right.
I don't know, like a Starbucks. It just feels like a really nice, welcoming experience. It's like everything's above board. It's
Yeah.
because there's nothing wrong with being sensuous and all that, but you want to give
Yeah.
people an elevated, very classy type of experience. And a lot of the indie companies, I get that vibe. They want to change perceptions and how
Yeah.
things were done in the past, and how people, even if things weren't done in a way that was negative, they want to change the perception.
Right.
One of the things that we put a big focus on is people doing things ethically. So from ethical materials, like materials that won't make you sick. So, like, focusing on materials that don't have high petroleum content, because it's not good for the human body, because it can be a
Wow.
carcinogen. So, like, any products they sell, they're making sure that any of the materials in there, that they're all safe, so that when you
Gotcha.
use them as a consumer,
Yeah, it
you're
won't
not
kill you.
unwittingly exposing yourself to
Right.
carcinogens, because your skin tissue and all that in those areas is really sensitive.
Right.
um Oops, 1 second, my screensaver just kicked in. Sorry about that.
You're still there.
So ethically, as far as the products that they use, ethically as far as the prices they pay their employees or their partners, making sure they're
Gotcha.
paying them. And then ethically as far as all the people who are there, contractors or employees or what have you, have choice. They always have the freedom to say no to things, and they're not elevating things that are unethical or negative. And I saying that as like a broad thing, because
Right.
ethical trying to cover like from products to services to entertainment.
Yeah.
But overall, that would be what I see in a lot of the indie stuff. I just went way left field,
That's
but
okay. I want to hear about it.
yeah, I mean, a lot of them I think are excited. They
Yeah.
know the challenges, and if they've been in it a long time, I think one of the things is, like, we were speaking with a company. They've been doing this for like 25, maybe 30 years, like a long time.
Right.
And one of the things that they shared was, well, they're very cautious about who they talk to or work with, because they've dealt with the whole gotcha thing, where they were given press by different newspapers or what have you, but those newspapers misrepresented the story, and they
Mm-hmm.
took things that the founders said out of context and all that. So one of the things that some folks who've been in it for a long time, while they're very energized because they know what they're doing is really positive, they're also very, very cautious, because they understand, they've been around the block a bunch of times. They understand they want to be careful that nothing is taken out of context and do any further damage to the vertical and create any misconceptions. So
Right.
that's one of the things that we had experienced that, um, I think I would assume is more common than I had realized going into it. I don't know if I answered your question
No,
or
you're
not.
spot on, man. And I'm building to something. It takes a certain mindset to even approach working with a new industry, right? To pivot in the first place, and then to work with an industry that's, it's an uphill battle for you, man. I mean,
Yes.
you're doing this design work, creative work on behalf of your clients, but it's an uphill battle, and I get it for everything you just said. And you told me a story when we were in New Orleans about how you fought, and you probably still do, an uphill battle just being who you are, you're African American, and that you told me some stories about how you would even pretend to sound different. You would write different.
Yeah.
You design your website to look. I don't understand different, but um, can you explain some of that?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's you made that connection, and I hadn't even thought about it that way. Yeah. I guess we in that way I can have a lot in common with our clients as far as when we first started.
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
Some. Oh, thank you. I
I see
appreciate it.
it.
I'm glad you do. Some of the mentors we had gotten from the small business. So the Small Business Administration, as if you're in business, any of your listeners, it's an organization to help businesses, small
Mm-hmm.
businesses. They have offshoot satellites called small business development centers. Those are usually located at like college campuses and business schools and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So if you go to a small business development center, you can get a mentor or you can just get educational information. There's a lot of free learning resources or really like financially accessible learning resources you can
Right.
get through that. So when we first started our business, that's the place we turned because this is old school. This is before
Yeah.
getting, LinkedIn didn't exist.
Right.
Lynda.com, I don't know that that even
I
exists.
did when I
Social
started my
media didn't
business
exist.
15 years ago. I got an SBA loan. I mean, I did it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So when we got a lot of the information, one of the things we kept seeing over and over again was they wanted me to like they kept using bankers as that was the model I should look like.
So they
That's the
didn't
model
want
I
you to be
should
a
look.
black person.
Yes.
So
So
yeah.
like change how you dress, change how you talk,
Oh
change,
shit.
like they were very clear on respectability politics. And so that was what kind of like how we tried to go into it. We tried very hard to do all of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. Now also the on the other side of the equation, I came from a uber hyper religious background, which also played into that because they were the exact same thing, and I
Yes.
was trying to be a minister and I was like uber invested in that. So both of those things together were kind of like created the you can kind of assume.
Right. Right. Right.
So when we started and we did our first website, we didn't put pictures of ourselves on the site.
Okay.
We were worried, okay, if they know it's a black person running it, they might think that the quality isn't as good, or they might think that we're not going to be professional.
Mm.
And so we've always put so much effort on, uber professionalism and all that kind of stuff, almost overcompensating for everything that we were concerned about. So, I hid my name because I'm like, oh, people are either going to think I'm black or Latin. So, I hid my name. We hid
Right.
our faces. We didn't want, then we're like, oh, but we're an interracial couple and we're married. Let's figure out how we're going to compensate for that. So it was a
Yeah. 10
lot of
years ago, that had to
challenges.
be a huge hurdle.
Yeah, it was. I
Yeah.
mean, it was. I remember showing up. So I used to also do blue collar work during the day. I had a day job.
Okay.
So the guy I used to work with, I was a contractor. So the guy I used to work with, who contracted me out all the time, he was always trying to help us get work. But most of the work was with other people in the industry. So, construction companies, what have you.
Sure.
Those were the type of because those were the people he knew professionally.
Yeah.
So I remember one guy that he sent me to, and the moment that guy saw me, it was like I should have just turned around and walked back home.
Ah.
It was the worst experience. I just knew going into it,
Yeah.
and he didn't try to hide it. And the only reason I think it even went on was because he had a professional relationship with the
Right.
person who had
Because your
sent me
friend.
there. So he was being, I think, concerned about burning bridges with that person. He
Right.
wasn't worried about me. He let me know that. But I think that kind of goes to the idea of if you're constantly trying to put on a front because you're worried about perception, you're gonna run into a situation like I did with that guy. If I had just been us 100%, that guy would have never even agreed to it, and it would have saved me the indignity, and it would have saved the time. So
Right.
that's one of the reasons why we've gone so hard in the direction we're in now, because not everybody's gonna. We're not for everybody. But the cool thing is, we have less unproductive conversations than we used to when we were so afraid to present ourselves, because we were
Right.
always so concerned about we're going to lose. And the reality is, yes, we were going to lose opportunity, but the people who would look at us and say, I'm not going to hire a black person or an interracial couple, they're going to find that out at some point.
Yeah, you
I
don't want to
would
work with.
rather them self-select and just never call us.
Right.
um
Right.
so that's kind of what it is. It's kind of like that reality of it's going to happen anyway. I don't know whose quote it is, but get to the no as quick as you can.
Yep.
Being very visible and straight up about it on our site gets us to the no, and I don't even have to get the phone call and worry about that.
Right.
I don't ever have to even field those calls anymore. So if someone calls us and they come through our website or they come through some other thing that we've done online, they already know what we're all
Right.
about. I don't have to say, oh wait, do I have to like put on my white voice? I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't have to do that kind of stuff because they know who I am, and that is freeing and liberating, and it gave me back my dignity in a big way, because that was one of
I
the
want to come
hardest
back.
things.
I want to come back to what you just said. Put on your
Yes.
white voice. But
Yes.
first, because that's the one that floored me when we were talking. But first, you said it's just like destiny. It's inevitable if they're not going to want to work you. I think of it, dude. In the first time you told me about this, I thought, damn, that guy's got a lot of courage. And I talk a lot about courage, and I'll tell you, I define courage as doing the right thing, even though you know other people will either judge you for it or it might harm you, right? And that's got to be kind of scary to make that jump from, worrying, like you're building your business, worrying about, man, I got to get these clients, and just being like, well, lose you.
Yeah, you lost me for a second. I don't know what happened there.
Tell me, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry about
It's
that,
all right.
Gene.
No, it's fine. We'll go back. It happens. It's Facebook. Facebook and YouTube is what we're relying on. During a pandemic, when everyone on the planet's trying to use it at the same
When
time.
like throughput and network
Yeah.
transfer is like absolutely redonkulously like high. Yeah, it keeps doing it. I don't know what happened here.
I don't know. It might just go in and out. It's probably the service.
Oh, okay. Like their servers just can't
Yeah.
keep up with
Probably.
transcoding all this.
Yeah. We'll be all right, though. If it spins, I'll just take a break. While we have a second, what I was saying was, and I'll go back. To me, that shows a lot of courage, because I know where your headspace was, and I know you're worried about getting clients. To have that courage to make that decision, to just decide if they don't want to work with a person like you, then I'm just not going to waste the time on it. I see that as courage, and that's another reason why you're here. So back to that, your white voice. Is that what you called it?
Yes.
What
yes.
What did you call that when we were talking? And I cannot remember the term you used. It
Code
goes-
switching.
There we go.
It's not on my end, is it?
It's my end. It's
Okay.
It's me hosting the show.
Okay.
I'll edit all this out when we
Okay.
post it back up.
Okay. I just don't want to wreck the experience. I didn't know if there's anything on my end that I should change or
Nah.
whatever. Okay.
You're fine. You're fine. It's happened a couple of weeks ago. It's just I think it's 3:30 in the afternoon. Everybody hits Netflix or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
So called it code switching.
Yes.
That blew my mind, and I want you to talk about your white voice. But then also it goes both ways, and I think I'm guilty of this. And you hurt my feelings when you told me about this, but I want to dig into that before our time is up. So what do you mean by your white voice?
So your white, if you, I'm trying to think of a good way, a good example. So as a black person, when you're little, you learn to put on your white voice. That's the voice you put on when the person on the phone can't see you, especially. So that you try to get good service or at least decent service. So anytime someone call in like the electric company or the phone company, um, and then when you're like, so when I was in school, take the bass out of your voice. I remember for the longest time I took the bass out of my voice, and then when I started like talking more like myself, people were like, "You have such a deep voice. Like, are you?" I'm like,
Wow.
I'm like, well, this is my normal voice. I'm just not comfortable enough around you where you ever hear my normal voice. And the problem
That's
is,
nuts.
yeah, it's there's a lot of things. There's a really good book. I gotta.
I'm
What
sure
is
there's
the name
more
of
than
it?
just voice, but
Yeah, yeah. The voices. I think what it is to like they say, language is culture. So
yeah.
like if you're Spanish, language is a but like food is also a huge part of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Language, food. So like when you are code switching constantly, as black people, it's a big part of like our existence here. But a lot of we incorrectly, a lot of us were raised that that was the way to do things. But the reality is it's not. It doesn't really get us ahead. And I understand
Right.
why we did it, because the 80s and 90s and early 2Ks were very different than 2017 and
Yeah.
2020. Like, might as well be like it is multiple
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah.
It's significantly different, and now we're at the point where it has been proven that stuff doesn't help us. It doesn't help white folks because they don't actually get to know who we really are as people, like our
Right.
genuine authentic selves as individuals. And it doesn't help us because we literally expend so much mental energy trying to police ourselves, how we talk, like even things like, and then the indignity that goes into it, and we're like doing
Yeah.
that to ourselves. So like that doesn't help anybody. Like, y'all deserve to get us as who we actually are. We deserve to get to just be ourselves and just talk like however we talk. And as I started doing that, I started feeling, I noticed a difference in myself. I felt a lot better about myself. And I think that like it's a process. Like, and I don't want
Right.
to make it seem like this stuff just like happened like the flip of a switch and just this has been years of work. It's because I'm 45 years old. So like if you're doing this at 15 or 20 and you're working through this, your progress is going to be so much faster. At
True.
45, I mean, I didn't start at 45, but you get what I'm saying. When you're
Yeah.
significantly older in life, it takes a lot longer. It's
Yeah.
like
You
the
got
whole
40
thing of,
years of habit built in there, man,
exactly.
and
It takes a,
fear and all kinds of stuff.
yes, and I'm so glad you said that. Fear, because you
Yes.
second guess yourself a lot. It's
Oh
a
yeah.
lot more to work through. So I had to do a lot of academic research and just learning a lot to make myself more confident in actually
Right.
doing this. So
Right.
I'm by no means an academic. I don't want to, but I tried to learn a lot. I tried to read a lot of literature on it, read books on it, and as I learned a lot more, it made it a lot easier to be confident and to realize, okay, I'm not irresponsible. I'm not being like just like impulsive and gonna blow up everything in my business and my life because of this. There's actual, data and
Mm-hmm.
sociological information like behind this. This is real. This is not just my being in my feelings. This is real. And I'm not
Right.
saying being in your feelings isn't real, but for my own self, it took a lot to get me to that point. And then
Right.
Sherry was a huge encouragement in that area as well, because she, because your significant other, if y'all, live together and all that, they see you a lot more than pretty much everybody else because they're with you. it's
Right.
it's a tight relationship, so she could see the impact of it. She'd see me after a call was over, or she'd see after we went to an event and I'm kicking myself. I'm like, I just want to be myself.
Right.
I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to wear my hair like that. I don't want to have to. I want to
Mm.
just be me. I want to bring me to the table. And if people like me, great. If they don't like me, I'll deal with it and get over it.
Right.
And so I finally got to that point and worked through that, and it takes a huge weight off. And I understand that not every industry is that going to be. I'm blessed to be in the industry we're in. It makes it a hell of a lot easier. I mean, I remember when they started wearing hoodies in tech in general. Before, back before Zuckerberg, I don't know who was one of the original people, but like maybe the guy behind Napster. No, I think Bill Gates used to wear a hoodie. Did I don't remember, but anyway, tech is ahead in a lot of ways as far as its uniform is very different than, say, if you're in finance or something like that.
Right.
It's going to be a
Right.
lot more challenging for you. I
Right.
still think it needs to be done. Like, I don't think that we should have to either have shave our hair all the way off or put relaxer in it to be okay. I think we should be
Right.
able to, like the way I look at it, like, um, I used to love like bands like Blink 182, Green Day. I used to love the dudes who had the punk hair and the spikes and all that. I never, when I encountered, like, I had some friends who were like that. I always just really appreciated their individuality, blah blah blah. I never looked down on them for that. I never like saw anything negative about them. I'm like, I should be able to be the same person. Just my hair is just different. My texture is
Right.
different.
You'll do whatever you
Nothing
want.
wrong with that. And I think
Right.
that as more of us do this, I think it's going to change a lot of the implications behind it as well. Like, you know how it is when a lot of people do something, it forces culture to change. And then next you know,
Oh
this
yeah.
thing that used to be considered a negative or taboo is no longer that. It's just, oh, that's just this. That's just
Right.
that. Going back to the sex industry, I think the same thing will happen where it will no longer be this like vilified thing that is, has this very negative connotations attached to it societally.
Yep.
Um,
No,
I
you're great. We have a question here. I'm gonna put it up and I'll read
okay.
it to you. I don't know. Can you tell me? Can you see that?
And then you have to undo what you've
Yeah.
already done when people hear the real you for the first time, and you have to deal with the identity ish all over again.
Yeah.
Oh, Sherry.
Yeah. There's a Sherry pop on the. Yeah, that
And
seems like a good point, man. Because you have, let's say you've built up this business rapport, and then they meet you, and what are you gonna do? That's a
that was
bigger
one of
problem.
that was one of the things that Sherry used to say to me all the time. Like, just, and I used to worry about that all the time. And I used to be really, really worried about that. I think one of the things that really helped me tremendously was a couple of small things I had gone to, and people I didn't know showed up as themselves. And I remember just being so like captivated by them. I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to be that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it really changed. It really like left an indelible kind of like imprint on me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I want to be the same thing. I want to just bring me to the table and do good work and all that kind of stuff. Be a decent person to people, and then hopefully that'll be the thing that'll be enough.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If it's not, then oh well. You
Exactly.
got to move on. There's enough business in the world. And then
Exactly.
and then we were talking, and that goes both ways too. And I think I'm guilty of that, where I will actually, what'd you call it? Code shifting,
Code switching.
code switching. I'm gonna write that down because I don't want to get that wrong later. Because first off, I like that term.
It's not my term though. That's actually
Yeah, I got you.
already in the lexicon. Someone else coined that term. I think in the '90s, maybe earlier than that.
Sure, that's
I
a
don't remember
solid
who
term,
did. Yeah.
but I think I'm guilty of that myself. Like when I speak to another like another African American person or whatever, I tend to try to be like I think they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also a giant. That's bad. You know what I mean? When I should just be myself.
Yes.
But that's where it's the fear, and it's not necessarily fear of like, oh God, I'm going to speak some way and these black dudes are going to beat me up. I mean like fear, like I want to be liked.
Yes.
I'm scared of not being liked, so
We want to be accepted.
I'm gonna alter who I am to accommodate what I think these other people want me to be like, and yeah, that's definitely fear, and fear is an element we always try to explore on this whole warrior mindset world, because fear controls us when we don't even know it's controlling us, and I think that's a great example of one, man, and how like you may have We talked about a lot of stuff, but was there a certain point in time when you sort of recognized that you were doing these things? Is there something like an acute situation that you can remember? I need to stop doing that. Or was it like gradual?
Um, that is a good. So yeah, it was the moments that stood out the most early on were not work moments. There were moments in the church.
Okay.
Moments when like I was such a devout person in the church that like it governed everything in my life. And I was like super fanatical to the nth degree.
Hmm.
So when I would get it's people look at me now, they're like, what? And but yeah, we all evolve and we all grow.
Right.
But yeah, but and I was born into it, which makes it very different. When you're born into it and it's all you know, then it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember getting I would get the ministers in the church would bring me into their back room, and they would give me all this reproof and counsel because you're wearing a short sleeve shirt, like a short sleeve button down shirt in the summer, like the
Right.
most absurd stuff, and it
Yeah.
kind of hit me like, do they not realize how much God is in my heart, how much I sacrifice for God, how
Right.
much like I literally take everything that they say as a literal thing and I do it to the best of my ability? Like, do they not realize like, and then when I realized how much like I was conforming my life for them and it wasn't even being fully appreciated, those were some of those, like Oprah says, those aha moments that started like getting locked into my brain. So
Yeah.
those were some of the early times. I think
Hmm.
some of the I think one of the other I'm trying to think. That is a good question. There
Well,
were
we.
other times like in my career. So here's another one. Like you were saying, talking and being comfortable around
Mhm.
people who are different culturally. We did some work for a not for profit, like a social justice organization back in like Providence, Rhode Island. They did a lot. They used music to help people who were in disadvantaged backgrounds. So
Mhm.
it didn't matter what their ethnic group was. They just had to be interested in the music and then using the music to apply to help them through life.
Okay.
So their focus was gospel music and then hip hop. And it's interesting, like dichotomy right there.
Yeah.
But so one of the things, like when we worked with them for like 10 years, like we did a lot of their stuff. But early on, when we first had a relationship with them, it was all virtual. So it was all over the phone or what have you. This is going back like in the early 2000s. And I remember when we finally first met the director of the organization, and he kind of was taken aback when he saw me. He's like, man, I would have sworn to God you would have had braids and a long goatee, and I'm like, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
What's
He's
up?
like, yeah, he's like, he goes, I've talked to you a bunch of times now, but he's like, you just don't look like what I expect you to look like from
Mhm.
having gotten to know you and Sherry all this time over the phone and emails and all that. And that really struck me because it wasn't that if I'd had those things, it would have been a bad thing. It was just that who he knew me to be, I was
Yeah.
hiding a lot of it because this
Right.
was still very early on in the business for us. And I was
Right.
hiding a lot of that in my physical presentation because I was still at that time really concerned. And he was someone I had a lot of respect for because his nonprofit was sponsored by people like MetLife and Bank of America and
Right.
like all these big corporate sponsors. They were sponsoring this nonprofit he was doing, and then they would have these like annual events that had hundreds of people. They would rent out like there's a park in Rhode Island in Providence. It's the same person who designed Central Park designed this park. It's got the zoo and all that stuff. So they would have this yearly event, and there would be like thousands of people there. They would and like he just everybody knew him. He had a radio show on the local indie college station WBRU. He like everyone knew him. He was like a pillar of the community,
Yeah.
extremely well respected by the corporate folks and the people in the actual neighborhood. So the fact that like when he said that, it really
Yeah.
registered for me. Like he wouldn't have looked at it like a negative thing. Like
Right.
he does a lot of work with people in suits, but he also does a lot of work with people in rap and hip hop and
Right.
gospel. And the gospel folks were super uber religious people. And
Right.
like, so this man saying that had a big impact on me. I'm like, I never forgot that. It
Yeah.
made a lot of it. I was like, wow, like he really. So I think that's one of the early ones. There's a
That's
lot
cool.
of them. I'm
I'm sure
just,
it's gradual.
yeah.
Just curious if there was some like, really super positive. That seems like a really positive
Oh yeah. That
experience.
wasn't negative. That was really
Right.
positive. That was almost like a
That's a win.
freeing moment. It gave me
Yeah.
additional permission that I
Right.
needed. I
Right.
really appreciated
And
that
that's
one.
important.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
important.
it's really important.
Yeah,
And I
we
think the oh sorry, I didn't
No,
mean to
you
cut you
go.
off.
You go,
I was
man.
gonna say I think the other thing was visibility. So
Right.
at one point, like seeing people on TV, this I'm saying TV because I'm going back like historically in our business
Right.
to before
Yeah.
all the like everything's online like video. So before when you got your news and you got like information, it was on regular TV.
Right.
And I remember on a local TV channel, they used to have a thing like City Beat. Most of the TV networks had a City Beat, and it would be
Yep.
all the urban news. And I remember seeing a guy that now we're actually friends, but at the time he was just someone who was on TV and he was a marketer and he was doing all this stuff for the Latin businesses in Boston and he was doing stuff for the black businesses in Boston and just watching him being like amazed, like he's on TV. He's doing this
Yeah.
on TV, and he's like,
Right.
he's working with reggaeton people and these different restaurants and club owners. And I'm like, so I think like visibility was another big thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't really matter. I mean, that was really dope that he was in our industry, but I've gotten the same thing from people in other industries, whether it's somebody who's a doctor or somebody who's in construction. I think one
Right.
of the guys I used to work with in construction had a big impact on me. He owned a construction company, had a bunch of guys who worked for him, but he'd still drive up to the job site every day in his like lowered Ford F-150 with a ginormous system, and
Right.
he'd kick rap and all of that. But he was everyone respected him. Like nobody played games with him. Like you
Right.
did your job and all that, but he was still one of the guys from the neighborhood, and that had a big impact. I'm like, I want to
Right.
be like him. I want to
Yeah.
be like great at your job and people are hiring you, but he doesn't tone it down. He's
Mm-hmm.
himself. He doesn't have to like abandon or turn his back on his culture or his music or anything like that. So there's a
Right.
few guys I've worked with on the blue collar side who definitely brought that to the forefront for me.
That's
And
awesome.
again, that was back in the like late '90s, early 2Ks
Right.
that was.
Right. Well, I mean, this is America. We'd like to think that if we are professionals and do a good job, it doesn't really matter what we look like or sound like or smell like. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
I'm a professional and I'm kicking ass for you, that should be enough. You know, and I feel like we're getting close. I think maybe not. I don't know. I've sitting on the outside, but a lot of the code see, my short term memory is not where it would be. Code switching. I recognize a lot of that is sort of a privilege that I have, that I don't have to do that. And when you were saying that, I started thinking about myself and how I do that the other way, and I realized, wow, what a privilege that is to not have to really worry about not being authentically me, right? Authenticity for me is easy, because I just got to get up and look at people, you know what I mean? But I can only imagine that side of it, and man, we talk about the warrior spirit here, and you've got to have that, man, and that's why I'm talking to you, because the toll of that's just got to beat you down.
Yeah, it is. It is exhausting, and the
Yeah.
more you are able to take it off of yourself and what do you call it, shed it,
Yeah.
the more you get some of that energy back, and
Hell
it
yeah,
is an
man.
amazing feeling. And after a certain point, I'm telling you, you're gonna feel, 100 pounds lighter. It's gonna make you. You're gonna start noticing it, and then you just start making
Yeah.
progress faster. It's amazing.
Right. Well, excuse my code switching, but real recognize real, right?
Yes, for real.
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate that.
Well, dude, Sherry, it looks like Sherry put in one more thing, and I want to read this. I think this is a great way to end this show with you. Authenticity is the collection of choices that we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen.
I love that quote.
That is a badass quote.
That is really cool. And Brene Brown is like, it's so funny that because as soon as I see that, I think of the Brene Brown speech she did at a small conference, and she talked a lot about this. So that's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate
It's a
that.
great one, man.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry. I wish you could be here with us both. Hope you get better. All right, man. Well, that's our 45 minutes. I appreciate your time and the insight and the look into your life, into the life of a true warrior. I would say you're a true warrior, man, and I
Oh,
hope you. I
thank
wish
you.
wish you success. And if there's ever anything I can do to help you, in any way with anything, please reach out because I
Oh,
will do the
thank you very
same.
much. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Thanks for your time today, and check us out next time, gang, and see you later.
Thank you. See y'all later. It was nice to connect with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.